And we're live. Welcome back to the 4th edition of the After Dram. It's a Talking Dead style gathering of friends where we talk about this book, Canadian whiskey, and a little bit about this book, and a whole lot about nothing else, really. So it's just a fun kind of a little bit of time with us. We all have extra things in our dram. Everything's going well. We just went through chapter 4 or section 4, chapter 10, 11, 12, 13 of the first book, Canadian Whiskey, the new portable expert. And we learned a lot about history and whiskey at the same time and how it nuns together. And I had a great time. It was really fun. Last week was great having two superstars with us. This week we've got one superstar, but more this week. I had more fun with the subject matter, I got to tell you. So next week should be fun as well. Davin kind of gave us a little hint about the Seagrams and how that's going to do up. So how's everyone else doing right now? Actually, no, let's do intros. Let's go around. Davin, I'll start with you. Quick intro to those in case it's brand new for them.
I'm Davin de Kergommeaux. You can get me at Davin DEK on Instagram and Twitter. I wrote the book and I'm drinking a lot 40 cast strength.
Hey, excellent. Nice. I love the cast strength.
Yeah.
You're up, Dave.
I'm next. I'm Yukon Dave. Work for Yukon Brewery, and I'm just drinking. I'm still drinking the number 20.
Me too. Nick, you're up.
Nope. Nick looks like she's frozen.
Nick's frozen, so Nick's not up. She will be soon. Let's go to you for now.
Hi, I'm Kent, also known as Whiskey Ass, and I'm doing Beer Face. And it has some tequila in it. A little bit interesting. First time I tried it, wasn't too interested in it. Did the two brewers innovated a lot 20 and now going to the Beer Face? It is a lot better, but the absolute honey sweetness of the toothpaste might be helping it out a little bit. Or maybe just a couple drinks.
You're a couple drinks in. It's all good. Nick, we're going to try you again. There we go. We see you now.
Nope.
Okay. I'm Nicole with Whiskey Bells, and I am drinking Dylan's Rye Whiskey 3 Oaks.
And I love that bottle. I'm going to have to buy it, I think, just for the bottle.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
No. I got to go back to you, Nick, because you're showing it.
Yeah.
Let's see that bottle again. The whole distilling process on the back. And I don't know what I'd put it in the back. I told you I'd put a black liquid, but I'm not sure what dark liquid I would put in there to show that.
Put a red or burgundy
dark
in there.
paper. Yeah. Just get a dark piece of paper.
Yeah.
And have it unwrapped.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. I tend to like to have alcohol in things. So that's where I'm leaning, buddy. But that's all good. Let's go back to Ryan. Sorry I cut you off there, buddy.
That's all right. I have this tiny little vial.
Mm-hmm.
Something that I like about being friends with Dolph is he's giving me all these little tasters. And this is the Gooderham and Worts 4 grain. So I'll be sampling on that for now.
That'll be my next dram.
And hello, I'm Dolph Shaw. I am the Spirit of Edmonton and the president of the Alberta Scotch Society. This is us. If you could see the little logo on the front, we're a beautiful society. People that just like to drink and talk about drinks, and this is an extension of it. So just about everyone out there is on the Alberta Scotch Society, except for Davin, but let's say he's an honorary member of the society.
Yeah.
So I have to send him a dram and a pin, and we'll all be really, really happy.
And his 10% off card.
Yeah.
And that saved me $150 yesterday at Wine and Beyond. It was a lot. So I'm still having the Gooderham Worts, the 4 grain, just like Davin was on. And no, that's this one here. Sorry. This one is what Dave is drinking. So it's the Two Brewers Innovative 20. It's hard to see on there, I know. And I'm still enjoying it. But Dave, I really do get that sweetness of a pop on it. It's like
You get that cola, the cola candy, the cola.
not the cola candy. No, well, no, I do get that a bit, but it's more like
Cream soda.
Sorry, cream
Yeah, didn't you say cream soda earlier?
cream soda. That's done. Okay. I was
So
going,
young-
not creamsicle, I don't get orange, but cream soda, yes.
Younger taste buds. Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah, I'm really young. I feel good. Thank you.
I got a few years on you.
I don't know, Dave.
Yeah.
Although you were around in the 1920s when they started that. I know that. Previous.
Yeah. I shut prohibition down.
Good. And made some money off of it, I hoped.
Yeah, I know I'm not that smart.
Davin, I didn't ask you this question before, and I wanted to about the one of the facts that you learned, because I talked about Güterheim and Worts being the world's biggest distillery with 2 million gallons coming out a year. Is there anything that you found anywhere in the history part, so today's or next week's, that you thought was really interesting, that made you feel patriotic?
Patriotic.
Yeah. You learned something. It's like, yes.
Well, it's pretty
country
cool.
did that.
It's pretty cool to realize that it was whiskey makers who paid the majority of taxes in Canada for so long.
Yeah.
That our country was kind of built on whiskey, and now they want to throttle it with all the taxes. It's like killing the goose that laid the golden egg.
Yep.
They're terribly mean to us. I know it. Okay. I've got a couple things, and it's kind of sciencey, so I want to kind of go off on a science tangent if I can. I didn't want to put this in the previous one because I didn't know how many other people would kind of speak up. Ryan's our resident science teacher. I'm a math teacher, but my background's not science whatsoever. So I'm going to do a couple sciencey questions. So if we could have a couple people come in. Best science quote, although, of the whole book was this, and it sounds very specific and very sciencey, but it's the best quote for a reason. So we know that water and ethanol molecules insert themselves amongst each other in a solution, so they combine. So the volume of a mixture of alcohol of water is always a little bit less than both the alcohol and the ethanol put together. So more than the sum of the volumes of the two separately. Does this mean that I'm getting less bang for my buck if I put water in my whiskey?
No, it's just more dense.
Well, what do you mean by bang?
More bang for, I'm getting less alcohol. If I'm putting 75 mils and 75 mils, it's not adding up to 150 mils.
Well, you still have the same amount of alcohol, right?
Yes.
So the volume shouldn't matter. It's the percentage of alcohol that matters.
But I don't get to drink as much, Dave.
Well, you get to drink it faster.
Okay. And
So
more
now
dense.
easier.
And we like the more dense things, I'm guessing. Davin, what do you think?
I don't see how you could draw that conclusion.
I'm losing out. Less to drink.
You've got
when these two
100.
things-
You've got 100 milliliters of alcohol. You add 100 milliliters of water, and you only get 190 milliliters. So you've lost 10 milliliters of water. Or
That's
have
a
you lost-
teaspoon.
It's just the density that changes.
They're just integrated.
Yeah.
I need science people to tell me about this. I need
Yeah.
some information.
The volume might be less, but the density is a little bit higher. So you're still good. It's not, but I can imagine when, like you said in your book, how he adds, this much liquid. And when he does the math, he always gets less than he should have. And, you could just be kind of laughing, with the hidden camera looking at the person trying to figure out what's going on when.
I would have been him going completely ape shit nuts trying to figure this out every time he did that.
Yeah.
And Davin, who was this again that was doing this in the book?
That was
it Molson's?
Thomas.
Molson's, yeah.
Was it Molson's? Oh.
It was Molson's, yeah.
So I guess I
Like
should
Ron
go
Livermore
for
is saying in the chat, he's saying that's why you measure by weight, not by volume.
Volume.
And the shrinking is marginal.
Okay.
But I just found it interesting that actually happened. I've been in the chemical industry for years, and I never saw that happen before. I never understood that.
Well, thank you, Dr. Don. I'm glad you piped in. My next one's also a scientific question, which I need a little bit of help with as well.
Mm-hmm.
Are we ready?
Ready.
So I've always had kind of a mental block whenever I think of this. A mental block. Is there anyone with a science background? I got three. I got Ryan, I got Davin, I got Dr. Don on the side. So someone's got to tell me this. That can explain how something as dirty as charcoal cleans liquids. We've seen it with barrels. You see it with fish tanks. You see it with water filters. And it's described here with early rectifying columns. Okay. How does this work that something so filthy and disgusting as charcoal cleans things? Help me out.
The charcoal has a quality that causes certain compounds, sulfur compounds in particular, to adhere to the particles of particles of charcoal. So they pull those out. The charcoal itself doesn't get added to the liquid. You filter that out. But with it, it takes all these particles, all these molecules of sulfur compounds and others. They say that it adsorbs to the surface of the carbon particles, so it pulls it out. But you filter it out, and it's so it doesn't add any dirt or anything like that to the whiskey. It's just it's just like another kind of filter.
So when they char the barrels, especially if they do a really thick char, do they do something to scrape? Because I think what Dolph is saying is you get all this particulate that's now floating around your spirit. Do they do something, or is it just simply because a lot of the drinks that we have are non-chilled filtered?
Well, filtering is a different thing than filtering.
Okay, so they still filter it then to get all that.
They do, yeah. They absolutely do, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know if you can see that, but that's charcoal out of a barrel that got loose in the back of my van and took my back window out. This is a $500 demonstration.
It costs you a bit. That's okay. Thank you very much for your time and your effort, and keep doing it.
But Dolph, you are right. The charcoal does get into the liquid, and you wouldn't drink it straight from the barrel. Well, no, a good example is the bottles that have a little bit of
Blackadder.
Yeah, right. So there you go. You get
Love
that.
Robin adds that charcoal deliberately to his bottles. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does he?
Yes, he does.
I got a couple of them. Well, I got 4 of them actually, and we finished a couple, but I like it. And I tell people it's like an adult snow globe. You just kind of twirl it around. I really do like it. So,
so it is dirty.
And Nick's got some as well. Dr. Don says charcoal has been used for 10,000 years to clean up liquids. And I said, do you still have little particles floating around? And he did say, yeah. So I would love to put Dr. Don on if he wants to. We've got 5. Who did we lose?
We lost Kent.
Kent stepped out.
Oh, Kent's saying we put Dr. Don on. Oh, Kent invited Dr. Don. So I'm going to do that in case Dr. Don feels like coming on. This you don't have to, Don. But I'm just going to try.
Well, you see charcoal in gas masks.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and when I was in the armed forces, same thing. It was charcoal in there as well. But another thing I would like to ask someone else, some sciencey person, if they got wet, they didn't work very well because it filtered out the air. But once this charcoal that was in my gas mask, there was 2 canisters on both sides. If it got wet, it was hard to breathe and it didn't filter anything out. Mm-hmm. So in basic training, when they tear gas you, because they tear gas everybody, I breathed in just because I felt like I was suffocating. And then eventually the whole thing sucked in and it was a horrible, Or experience.
Well, didn't they talk about how long it took the whiskey to go through the rectifiers? It took
Yeah,
days.
it trickled through slowly. Yeah.
Yeah, I was surprised by that. I was just amazed at how long that took.
Oh, Don said he can't connect. He's on his iPad. He can't, but no worries. So thank you, Don. We just want to give you the chance. So I'll bring Kent back in when he wants to come back in.
They
Thank
also
you,
had they also had horse blankets in those rectifiers to create layers.
They're not
Really?
used horse blankets, are they?
They're
They're not used.
You know
Are
what?
they?
I never saw any reference to that at all.
That's,
Wow. And why a horse blanket? Because is it just
Yeah.
dense cotton?
It's coarse.
It's probably a blanket, and they just said it was a horse blanket. Yeah. I don't think there's anything special about it.
I got it. So those were my two sciencey questions, guys, and I needed a little bit of help. I am a math teacher, and in high school, I took Bio 30. I only needed one course to get into university, and I got to tell you, I cheated my way through the whole bloody thing. I did too.
I hope your students are watching now. They're going to learn a few tricks.
Oh, which tells me, where's my banner? I have to have my banner on the bottom.
you must be, yeah.
Oh, there we go. I didn't have my banner before. Here it goes. Thank you, Davin. Appreciate it. That's really important. Yeah, we have to be good stewards for our children out there.
Yeah.
But no, it's Bio 30, and Dr. Don was talking about this too. He said it kind of changed for him in grade 10 with the teacher. Mine was a grade 10 bio teacher, Mr. Niebel, which is one of the few teachers where I remembered their name, but this guy was fantastic. So, and I can't remember Dr. Don, but it was in one of the articles he had mentioned him.
Dr. Don says horse blankets in the first tray.
And
Dr. Don in the chat, he's saying horse blankets in the first trays.
the first trays.
Oh,
Well, how many levels would they actually have? So they'd have that, and then coal, and then something else, and more coal. I'd like to
Get
see
the big stuff out.
I'm a visual guy. I think that would be kind of cool to see what's going on with these old rectifiers.
Well, they talked about 10 feet of charcoal as part of the filter. So you can have some pretty tall ones.
Okay.
I read where they
I'm surprised at how quickly they had to change them out all the time.
Mhm.
Talk about greenhouse gases from burning all that wood to make charcoal just to filter whiskey.
Yeah.
Well, you have to wonder too, like in here, Davin says that they used fine rolled pine charcoal. In comparison, JD uses a maple sugar charcoal. So it's kind of, you got to wonder how much it actually affects some of that flavor.
Yeah, the Americans use a lot of maple.
Holy Don, 73 trays in your rectifier? How
Oh
many
my goodness.
feet high is that? Because I know that here we have a local distiller and they have 21. That thing's 2 stories high.
73 trays in our rectifiers.
Yeah.
And when you say your rectifiers, what do you mean by that? Is this JP Weiser's, Goodrum and Warts? Where, Don?
Mhm.
And while he's typing that, Davin, I do have another question for you, if that's all right. Page 97. The whiskey Molson's imported to England was distilled twice to concentrate it to, and this is the thing I had a problem with. There's 2 quotes. This one says to 34 degrees over proof.
Yeah,
Give
I
me
think
the other
that
one,
makes
'cause I don't understand what 34 degrees over proof was. And the page after, Goodrum and Warts managed to turn out a mere 28,863 gallons, and these were most likely 35 degree underproof spirits.
Yeah.
So I really didn't understand.
This
So I'd
was
like an explanation.
This was British proof.
Okay.
Everyone thinks proof like is twice the ABV, but that's not British proof. British proof was the amount of alcohol, the strength the alcohol had to be that when mixed with gunpowder, it would still ignite.
Mhm.
which is 57.1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
147%.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
that's what we meant by
Maybe
Okay.
wrong.
57.147%. Say so. Then, if it was over 57.14%, they could measure that, and then say that was that much overproof or underproof. So proof alcohol was not 100 proof; it was
That's what I was thinking.
57.14% alcohol, which is what.
Okay.
I can't
All
remember. So
Yeah, I was getting
that's
messed
what
up
yeah.
with the math, Davin, and I was
Pardon?
trying to figure it out, and I was getting messed up with the math, and I was having a hard time figuring it out.
Well,
And-
the Americans that went to basically half, so 100 proof is 50%.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
So it's like they're on their own measuring system. So they can't be the same as anybody else.
Yes, Don, we'd like that circulation.
Don also said it's around 80 feet high.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they do it for all brands. So all of them that he deals with. And I have a calculation to send you if I want. Yes. The math geek in me would like that. Thank you very much, Don. And I had one last question. I know this is supposed to be more casual, but I had one last question that I didn't think people wanted to hear about in the other one, but it was interesting to me. Do you think that Corby's went under because they did everything? So they had the distillery, the dry house, the barrel handling, blending, filtering, bottling, warehouse, blacksmith, draft horses, cooperage, the cattle that they had that they were fattening up on their spent grain.
No, they went under because the demand for their whiskey was dropping like crazy. They just couldn't think. Pardon me?
Why though?
Because people stopped drinking whiskey. It was the same.
Just that.
People stopped drinking Scotch. They stopped drinking American whiskey. They stopped drinking everything. So it plummeted, and they just couldn't keep going. They tried to consolidate. They brought McGuinness in.
Yeah.
And that was, gave it a little bit of life, but that didn't, that couldn't keep them going either. They eventually moved everything down to Hiram Walker in Windsor. There just was not the kind of demand that there is now. So they just, a lot of distilleries went under, not just there, but all over the world.
Got it. But they didn't end up being the biggest in the world at any point in time. They didn't supplant Goodrum and Warts, right? Or did they?
I don't think so. Molson's was bigger than Goodrum and Warts for a while.
Yeah.
But I can't remember if Corby's, but I guess some people keep track of that and some don't. So,
Okay. And Don has the back taxes that were owed by Mortimer Davis, and that contributed to it as well. Yeah, I was just thinking that maybe they just had too much going on. They couldn't focus on it, but then...
Well, no, all of that was part of a distilling operation. They do the same thing now in Windsor. They have all of that in Windsor except for the cattle.
It may have just...
How about the horses?
Yeah.
Do they have the horse barn?
They do have a couple of horse-drawn carriages, but I don't think they're owned by the distillery. That's for tourists.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
Maybe I'm thinking of the wrong place. Maybe that's somewhere else. Anyway, yeah.
Well, really, the only thing that comes to mind with me with horses is Budweiser, and that's the beer I drank when I was 18 and 19, and really not since I've been 20. So I would like to see that, to tell you the truth.
At the Corby Distillery, they used to keep track of each part of the operation for health and safety purposes. And so you could see, like, it was this many days since they had an accident in the stable, and this many days since they had an accident in the distillery, and this many days since they had an accident in grain handling and so on. It's really quite interesting. But when you look at those records, it gives you a real insight into the distillery and the way it operated.
And that's kind of ahead of their time too, because what you're talking about there seems like it's kind of a modern way of dealing with your workers. And I see that when you go into my daughter's thing where she was working. I'm not going to say what, but you would see that on the wall. This many days since our last accident. So it's. I wouldn't have guessed it was something from 150 years ago.
Yeah, it surprises people when they see some of these things. Like another thing they had at Corby's, it was they had this massive water recycling plant. So they would take water out of the river, put it through all their processes, and then they would clean it and put it back into the river, so that they weren't putting any waste into the river. It was really kind of cool. And they used to talk about fishing for trout in the Moira River, and right on the banks of the distillery.
Too bad they couldn't do that today.
Well, I don't know if they're fish there or not.
Oh, continue. Sorry.
Yeah. One of the things I found really interesting in the book, and I mean, it's the header of the one chapter for Molson's, that they were, because everybody knows Molson's brewery, but they actually have Molson's district. It was 155 years ago. They were a distillery. Like, that just blew my mind away.
Yeah, I think most people don't know that, and even when you tell them, it doesn't really register, because we always think of Molson's Canadian,
Yeah.
Molson's.
They're a beer company. They
own so many different companies. They own Beaver Lumber. They are owned. Was it Wyandotte Chemicals? It's amazing to see what they owned over the years.
Yeah, a lot of them are like that.
A company that's been around for 200 years, I would hope they would have diversified a little bit, because that's the only way you make it through climate change like we're in right now, is to diversify. There's one product, sooner or later, it is going to dry up for a spell.
But they sold all that stuff off. So I don't know. Did they spin it off when they needed money? What?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. They had it and then they didn't have it. So.
Well, I know when I was reading that section, I'm like, is there a second Molson that I don't know about? Because I've only known them for their beer. So it was a lot of fun reading that section of the chapter, because I had to convince myself that I'm reading about the beer, like the beer producer in a whiskey book.
Yeah, they were really
great. Don just put this on the side. I talked with a brewmaster from Molson, and they still have recipes in their archives. So.
Yeah, I've seen their archives. They have all kinds of really interesting things. Yeah, going way back.
So that would be really interesting, maybe with the hockey series, the alumni series, to have kind of a Molson's thing. Because help me out, everybody, but we did have Molson's Hockey Night in Canada, did we not?
We sure did.
Yep.
It was Molson's though, right? So doing that and a combination with that, and actually, I should ask, Don, do you own Molson's? Is not you, but well, maybe you do. I don't know. You do really well for yourself, Don. Maybe you own them. But your parent company, is Molson's a part of it? And would you be able to use that with the alumni series somehow? I think that'd be kind of cool. And while that's happening, Davin, I'm going to ask you a question about Corby's, because I thought it was closed. And I was on Instagram 2 days ago, and there was two ladies, one that was working at Corby's, one with Wisers, and I forget their names, and I feel really bad about this, but I only caught them for a couple seconds, and she was talking about Corby's. I thought it was closed. Help me out, please.
The distillery?
Yes.
It's not only closed, it's torn down.
Oh,
okay.
It's gone.
Yeah, where did all the labels go?
Well, the labels have gone to Hiram Walker in Windsor, but no, the distillery is demolished. I mean, when I went to Corby's when it was still operating as a distillery, and it was, as I said, I was a kid, and it was kind of frightening. But I was there 20 years ago, and a lot of the buildings were still standing, but one by one, they got burned or torn down or destroyed or something. I think one of the warehouses now being used for a farmer's market or something like that, but there's nothing there. You just can't even imagine. The manager's house is still standing, and that one warehouse is there, and I think there's a restaurant in where the lab used to be, but other than that, it's gone. Yeah, it's gone. I mean, yeah. They use
Dr. Don says they have labels of Corby in their archives. Tell me what happened to Corby's, though. They were incorporated. They
Crap.
went bankrupt, but was their whiskey not taken over by somebody at one point in time? Like you hear about a lot of people in Scotland, they go bankrupt, but they still sell their bottles or barrels. Sorry.
Well, the whiskey, the barrels, if there were any left, would go to Windsor, because that's where the whiskey was processed. Because I mean, it was owned by Harry Hatch,
Right.
or by Harry Hatch's son, and they moved it out of there. But I mean, they moved a lot of McGuinness whiskey into Corbyville as well, but they just. There just was not sufficient demand, and so they consolidated.
So what's the parent company that owns the rights to it now? I guess
Pernod Ricard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and Don says the oldest unopened bottle we have is an 1895 bottle of Corby.
That was
Cool.
probably
Isn't that
very
cool?
disgusting.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'd still like to try it, but you know what? We hear about this in Scotland, and I haven't heard about it till just now with Dawn, but where they would have samples from all the other distilleries and like just small vials of them that they can compare and try to, distill or create different things depending on what's actually happened in the past from, I guess, parent companies that have brought them all together. Because I don't know how, let's say, Macallan would get their hands on stuff from other companies that they're not related to.
He was just buying.
Well, they used to trade barrels like crazy.
Well, that I know, but there's just so much information where they have so many vials from so many different distilleries. And in my mind, they weren't trading with 50 other people, but maybe they were trading with that many.
There are very few whiskey labs in Canada that don't have a bottle of Crown Royal, because that's the whiskey that everybody wants to make. And I remember when Mike Booth was the master blender, they didn't call him master, but when he was the blender at Hiram Walker, he said that was the whiskey that they would love to be able to replicate. And if you go into some, they've got all their competitors' bottles sitting there because, they taste them, and you have to taste them just so you know what's happening in the market.
Yeah.
So it's I don't see how it's a surprise that they would have other people's bottles or other samples of other whiskeys there. And some of these whiskey libraries are massive. You go into Diageo's library in England, and man, they've got everything you can imagine.
Yeah, Diageo owns 23 distilleries or something like that.
Well, I don't know how many they own right now, but I mean they've owned a lot. Yeah.
Last I heard, I think it was something like 23.
Yeah, but it's not just their. It's not just their own. Sorry.
And Don says we still have barrel heads in our inventory with Corby, McGuinness, and G&W. So good for awards. So yeah. It's just a part of the business where the average drinker, we just don't really think about it until we're put in a situation where, like this, we can think about it. Yeah. It's really quite cool what happens behind the scenes. And I'd love to go behind the scenes, but I don't know if it would take the mystique out of it, Davin. We talked about that last week, knowing more about it. Does it take away from the mystique, or does it give or add to the mystique?
I think it enhances. Well, it depends on the kind of person you are.
I think so.
I said knowing where the flavors come from enhance the enjoyment, and Dolph, you'd said it for you. It does not enhance the enjoyment. It takes away some of the mystery. But for me,
not the mystery. It enhances the annoyance that I can't taste the things that I'm supposed to taste. But
there are things that people have blind spots, and you just shouldn't beat yourself up if you can't taste something, because you're enjoying it a different way, and everything you taste in your life you enjoy a different way. Most of what when I'm talking to people about whiskey at whiskey shows, in master classes and things like that, it kind of dismays me that almost everything that most people know about whiskey they get from brand ambassadors who are really salespeople who are really trying to sell their whiskey,
Hey,
who
what's wrong
are
with
telling the
sales people?
story in such a way that it makes their brand look the best, because that's how they get their bonus. But because how much whiskey they sell. So you really if you listen to the brands, you really do not get the real truth of what's happening with whiskey. And I think it's good to get out and visit as many distilleries as you can and see what's happening behind the scenes, to know what's going on, so that you can make the assessment. Because a lot of these people who are out there presenting the whiskeys, they're either giving a sales pitch that marketing has told them, or they're making it up as they go along. There've been some of the people I've seen recently are really and truly
Defend your industry, Dave.
misinformed. I have never been to one of your master classes, Dave.
I agree with Davin. I mean, the bullshit that's flying around out there is amazing. And
That was one of my questions last week we didn't get to. And let's say Nick and I probably go to maybe 50 tastings a year. Would you say that's pretty good, Nick?
That's fair.
And we see a lot of things out there and a lot of presentations. And I'm wondering, and I'm going to take off for 1 second and come back, but I'll still be able to hear you. I want to know some stories of maybe things that you've heard from brand ambassadors, people at whiskey tastings. Maybe it was me at the Alberta Scotch Society saying something terribly outrageous. I would like to hear some outrageous stories, if there are any out there.
Well, I got an email from Al, our distiller, and the first line was "more questions" with a question mark. I go, if I don't know, how can I explain this to people? Yeah. And I don't think all the sales guys kind of look that carefully. They believe in the hype and the marketing kind of stuff. Where, like, when I worked in the chemical industry, I talked to our guy that was a doctor of polymer chemistry. He said, "You're the only sales guy that asks these questions." I said, "Well, I don't understand how things work." Like, and that's what's been so much fun about reading Davin's book is I'm understanding a whole bunch more stuff. And I think my classes will be a lot different now because of what Davin's brought to light.
Well, that really pleases me to hear you say that.
Well,
I'm glad that it's had that kind of effect, because I try not to speak from a brand's point of view. I try to bring all the information together, and I've got a really great in-depth background in Scotch, and in Irish whiskey, and I know a fair bit about American whiskey as well. So it's really kind of integrated in these things. But Dolph asked about the most outrageous thing that I've heard a brand ambassador say, and I'll go back to when Diageo first brought out the distillers editions. Do people remember they were the 6 classic malts, and then they did the 6 distillers editions? There are more than that now. And I remember this brand ambassador telling us, "You've tasted single malts, but have you ever tasted double malts?"
Double malt.
And to her,
blended malt?
Yeah.
double malts. And because they had been matured in 2 kinds of barrels, they now were double malts. And she gave this great explanation about double malts and going on. And it was like latest thing. And when Diageo had invented this, well, Bill Lumsden invented it, but Diageo had invented this, and they were going on doing all this stuff, and it was just like there were a few of us there who knew that she was just full of malarkey, and but since then, I've heard some people it's not that they actually say something wrong, but they say it in such a way that it makes their brand look better, like. So which to me is another form of dishonesty.
But I think what happens a lot of time is salespeople know what the manufacturer tells them. They don't know what's going on in the industry.
Yes, but that's why Dolph had asked me if it's good to get behind the scenes and see what's going on, and my answer is yes, because the information you're getting at whiskey shows and from brand ambassadors, no matter how well intentioned and how well meaning they are, it very often, not always, there's some great people out there, really straight shooters, but very often it has been filtered through marketing, and it's delivered in a manner that will make you think well of their products. And also, when you go behind the scenes at a distillery, you see the way things are made, and you really get, I mean, I'm thinking of a good example. I remember before Brook Laddie was open, I knew I met Don Renier or Mark Renier, and he took us through, and then they were opening up that spring, and he introduced me to Jim McHugh and all these people, and we went in, and what really kind of blew my mind when we went in the warehouses is they had barrels of Macallan and barrels of Longmorn and all these things in this, and up until that point, I'd always thought, this is Brook Laddie. They'll have barrels of Brook Laddie in there, but they had all, and that's when it kind of clicked for me that these guys are really more than just trading barrels. They're trading spirit, and they're maturing them in their own warehouses, making them their own way, using them in their own blends. You'll never see you'll never see a Macallan come out of Brook Laddie. You might see it on Murray McDavid label, but you'll never see it on Brook Laddie. But they had those things there that they could mix in, and and learning about from those guys about finishing was really cool, because Jim McEwen was because Brook Laddie had a lot of whiskey sitting there that was really not very good. And so they would put it in one wine barrel for a month, and then they'd take it out of that and put it into a different wine barrel for a month. They might do that, 3 times or more until they finally got enough flavor in it that they could actually, it actually, tasted good. Some of it tasted really good, actually. So it's, there's so much that you learn behind the scenes that really kind of opens your eyes. For example, putting soap in the still. Touring Scottish distilleries 20 years ago, that was something they often talked about, using soap, putting soap in the mash tun. It was pretty common. So I think going behind the scenes, but it's a different thing altogether. And I tried to write my book with information I learned behind the scenes, not just repeating the stuff that I heard from brand ambassadors, or that I got on the web, or that I got from company websites and things like this. That's been filtered through 6 layers of marketing people and copywriters and things like that. And by the time it gets out there, it's a wonderful story, but it really doesn't give you insight into what's happening. So if you really want to understand whiskey or beer or anything else, you really kind of have to dig deeper. And does it destroy the mystique, Dolph?
No,
I don't know.
But I do want to know, who do we talk to? Is it the distiller and brewer, or is it the owner?
No.
Is it?
These are the people. I'm going to give you my little secret here.
Okay.
You talk to the people who are retired, who no longer work in the industry, because they'll give you the straight goods. And believe me, it very often does not conform with what they would have told you 2 weeks earlier when they were working at the distillery. And I'm not sure how much I want to say in public, but
don't use names and say anything you want. It's great.
Keep my name out of this, eh?
Yeah.
He still has the job, and he'd like to keep it.
Well, I heard, I was listening to some politician from Calgary talk on the radio, and it came down to all the questions. He said, here's what it comes down to. He says, do I want to tell the truth, or do I want to get reelected?
Yeah.
And that's marketing.
Yeah.
Well, I want to tell the truth because I work for myself.
Yeah, which is great.
And people who are in the know recognize when they're being bullshitted, and recognize when they are reading the real stuff.
But I don't think the general public, like the masses, don't really know that. They if you're looking at a whiskey wall and you don't know anything about whiskey, and then it's the sales guy go, yeah, this is my favorite, and they've done this, they've done that, and you go home with that because somebody else because you don't know anything. So how are you going to pick something if you don't know?
You go home with that, and your buddies come over, and you can tell them that story, and it makes them feel like you know little more than they do. And there's nothing wrong with that, Dave. Nothing wrong with that at all.
I tell a story. I
Uh-huh.
was in Vancouver, and I walked for miles in the rain, and it was just horrible. And I finally stopped at a bar, and the bar manager was really nice, and we got talking, and he bought me a Japanese whiskey. He said, "Yeah, it's on the house, no problem." And I said, "I'm going to buy this when I get home because it tastes delicious." I got home, bought it. I thought, "Wow, this tastes better when you're wet and cold." Like it.
A lot of things do, Dave. Yeah.
Well, Dolph, I want to make a comment. When you asked me to start reading this book, and I had read it once, and I'm like, it's Canadian whiskey. Why are we doing Canadian whiskey? That was my honest reaction. Having Davin to bounce this off of, and having Dr. Don live last weekend in our comments, why haven't we been doing Canadian whiskey? Why have we been caught up in the mystique of Scottish whiskey? Why aren't we getting deeper into Canadian? My God, it's fascinating. I want to go to half the archive stuff that Dr. Don is talking about. He's like, "Oh, we've got this here. You should come see this." I'm like, we should be talking about this. Should be flogged everywhere.
Well, I go in. I hang around liquor stores a lot, and
me too, Dave.
People come in and they go, "Yeah, I'm not sure what I want," and right away they take them to the Scotch wall. Yep. And it just drives me crazy because they don't talk about Canadian. Oh, you got to try this from this distillery, that distillery. It's always Scotch. And it's just frustrating that all of us Canadians get passed over.
Scotch is a real easy sell.
Yeah, it is. But the history of it kind of sells itself because they've been doing it for a long time. They're passionate about it. They talk about it. And it's something that's taken off. And last week we talked about it with Dr. Don. Starting in the 1960s, before that it was all blends. Trying to sell a single malt in the 70s and 80s or early 80s was really hard until it took off. So marketing does have a place, and it really does help certain companies. But I really love the idea of talking to people who have been unceremoniously dumped or who have retired. I think that's a fantastic idea. If I can actually get to them, Davin, I would do that in a second.
Most of my sources, I can say this publicly because most of my sources are no longer with us.
Oh, okay. You're not getting sued.
But there's a new generation coming up. There are some guys at Seagram's, I'm telling you, they'll tell you stuff that'll make your hair curl.
Now, I'm just going to read a couple of Don's comments. It's up to the company to train ambassadors, spend the time to do it. I think that's important, but you can tell a brand ambassador that's shoving something up your butt that doesn't believe in it. There's just, and as a teacher, it's the same thing. You can tell a teacher who doesn't really believe in what they're doing or doesn't really give a crap, someone who just goes through the information, because teachers have a lot of information. A brand ambassador's got a lot of information. They've got the cards, they've got the pre-sell, they know what they're going to say. But unless they have a faith in the product, and a genuine faith, it kind of comes through. All our ambassadors, this is Don again, have a different line to me if they get any questions in the field that they don't know. And that's a great thing because, well, I've asked Don myself. We had a discussion last year about inserts and what I thought an insert was and what he thought it was. And to go directly to someone who knows what they're talking about to clarify some issues really helps.
That's exactly what you're saying. You're going behind the scenes and getting it from the horse's mouth.
Yep.
Well, when I have a question, I talk to Bob and Al, our two brewers.
Yeah.
And then I go online and I listen to all three stories and I go, okay, kind of figure it out from there. What's going on?
And the online sources has a place. Like there's a lot of information we can get online. Mm-hmm. But as any good teacher, you have to tell people, you got to look at your source, right? Just get the information.
Internet, it's not
present it to someone else who can tell you if it's right or not.
Yeah, and the online sources I use are always the same whiskey guys from wherever it is, and if you you get that feeling of trust, and if I don't trust them, I don't listen to them.
Yeah.
So mine's always a compilation of a whole bunch of information coming in, and then I make up my story from there.
And Don is right. Some do a better job than others of training their They're ambassadors. And honestly, once the ambassadors get a good sense of confidence about whiskey, it's much easier for them to tell the story because they know where their brand fits in the overall context. But a lot of them, to me, they'll pour you a nice whiskey and they'll tell you an interesting tale. But if you really want to get behind the scenes, you've got to talk to people who don't have skin in the game.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
You just
No, I like that a lot.
Yeah.
And let's get back to the mystique. I think breaking down the mystique is greater for people who don't just have it as a passing hobby, but are a little bit more invested in it.
Mm-hmm.
People, and I care, I read, I go online, everything I can kind of absorb, I do. And knowing more information helps. It does. But when I first started off, the mystique of drinking whiskey, of drinking scotch at the time, it was just a feeling that I had that I wanted to continue. And having more information didn't always help that situation.
Yeah.
Right now, it really does. Because if I can remember it, and I've got a horrible memory, and Ryan, above anyone else in my life, except for my wife, knows very well how bad of a memory I have. But if I can retain the information just for a little bit of time, I usually use it for the common good somehow.
But I think buying whiskey, being informed buying whiskey is the same as being informed buying a car, being informed buying a house, being informed buying anything. If you go out there and say, hey, I want to buy something, I got money, salesmen are going to love you.
Yeah.
Like you're going to get all kinds of stuff sold to you.
Well, and I like the comment of being behind the scenes because, if you've ever made your own beer, you've gone through the process. You've put your time, your effort into it. You have some sort of memory about hanging out as you're doing it, and you're going to drink that beer, and it's going to taste delicious, or that wine or whatever you're drinking, because of the experience building it. So, when somebody is selling a product, you have to ask yourself, well, what kind of experience do they have with the whole business? And that brand ambassador might really like the secretary, might really like the boss that just has a connection with the business. And so, of course, they're going to like it and they're going to pass on that passion. So I don't think anyone is, yes, there's a certain level of marketing, but I think they're just sharing their experience with it. And it comes down to just trying it yourself to find out, do you like it as much as they do?
Well, look at how long the sales guys have been around. Like a lot of my beer industry guys, they have sales guys galore. Like it's just guy after guy. Like, how do you build confidence in the public if it's always a different guy showing up?
How long do they usually last in that business, Dave? Like how many years is someone a brand ambassador for beer? Because I go to a lot of beer tastings as well. Yeah. And I get I develop a relationship with a person that I've seen 4 or 5 times that year. They get to know me because I spend my time at the table and I ask questions.
Yeah. There's a group of like breweries that have a stable sales force, and there's a group of breweries that are turning them over all the time.
Yeah. And
so to come up with a number is really hard, but I look at Alley Cat, they have a lot of guys that come and go. You know, there's I don't want to get into putting names to things, but
you probably shouldn't, buddy.
It's when I sold chemicals like coatings for floors, people said, yeah, we see a different guy every 6 months. Like, what kind of confidence does the public have in that?
They don't.
You know, but that's the sales thing. Oh, we'll get another sales guy. We give him a card. He's a sales guy. He knows our product.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't happen overnight.
Nice. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm involved with pouring a little bit more whiskey. It's a relationship, and anyone that's involved with the public knows that it's the relationship that you build with the people and the trust they have in you and how genuine they think you are. And that's kind of my word for a teacher. Yeah. How genuine do the kids think they matter to you? Do the people think that they're being heard when they're talking to you? And do you care? I think that's really important. And I don't know how many people actually realize this, but maybe it's just me and maybe I'm just imagining things. But when I'm there with a brand ambassador and I see a lot, it's usually their first 4 or 5 words. You can tell if there's someone that you want to listen to.
Okay, I think this is going in the wrong direction, or I've been misunderstood. I'm not trashing brand ambassadors at all.
Oh no,
there are most of them that I've met are fabulous. There have been some really, train wrecks, but most of them are really very good. But what I'm saying is, they're there to tell a story to make you buy their whiskey.
Yep.
And and the question, this whole conversation came up because you asked, does it destroy the mystique to go behind the scenes?
Yeah.
And I say no. If you go behind the scenes, you're going to learn a ton more. But I'm telling you, there are most of the brand ambassadors I know out there, I have great respect for, and I like what they're doing.
And I'll buy a bottle because a brand ambassador that seems to be very involved with it and believes in it tells me something. And I'll talk about Jay Wheelock. He was a brand ambassador with whom I had complete faith. If Jay knew me fairly well, and as much as I had seen him, let's say for the past 6 years, I saw him for 4 years at tasting after tasting after tasting.
Yeah.
He got to know me. He didn't know my name right away, but after a while he did. And Dolph is a bit distinctive, but still, he was able to come across as genuine. And when he suggested something to me, I bought it. So we have faith in people, and brand ambassadors are fantastic, just like any other thing, police officer, teacher, politician. There's people who we trust and who we don't trust. And the more that they seem genuine, the more likely I am to actually do what they say. And I know that we're supposed to have our own opinions. And this goes with bloggers. This goes with other people that talk about whiskey online and people I generally trust. And Ralphie's one of them online that I generally trust. And I'll buy something. In the end, I don't have to agree with them. But I still everyone likes direction. Even someone that's been around and you have a lot of bottles behind you and you've saved a lot of bottles, you still like a little bit of direction. Every one of us has someone we have faith in. So it's nice to see the brand ambassadors that you have faith in. And I do have quite a few, but there are people who are full of crap. That's let's end with that.
Do you think it's too, Dr. Don has a point here. He says there's a level of consumer. If you've got a really sort of savvy brand ambassador, they're going to read you as the consumer and say, are you entry level, mid-level, or are you geek? And what do I feed you because of what level you're at?
Yep.
I know when we were pouring the MS Whiskey Festival, we got a lot of that too. You could tell they kind of just walked up and then they would sit and listen to you for a while. And they're like, oh, well, you're just starting out. Okay, so what have you tried? What do you like? Well, we don't know. Well, start at the beginning and let's work through. And we were pouring a brand that I'm not a big fan of, by no means. But by the end of the night, we just got it to be kind of a bit of or almost a running joke. It's like, come on out, try the running gamut. Because you know what? You got to start at the base. Because everything in that base is all the way through. Everything else beyond it is just a finish, right? So if you like the base, then you figure out what finish you like. So by the end of the night, I mean, everybody's hammered out of the tree. They're coming around. They're going, I was told we got to try the gamut, right? So it just became a playtime for us. Because, I mean, I couldn't sell the brand. I don't like the brand. I don't believe in the brand. But people are there to try whiskey, and you know what? They might like that brand. So that's my job at that point, to sell the brand, whether I like it or not.
Well, see, and you're kind of a guy that drops in and drops out of those kind of situations. But
very true. Yes.
For me, as a salesman, that if I don't like it, boy, I can't sell it.
Yeah.
They're just I can't do it.
Yeah.
Dave, I'm going to disagree just a little bit, but not really. I do agree, but and I'm going to excuse. Last time I was pouring for you for the Edmonton Beer Geeks.
Yep.
Is that it? And it was, where was it? It was the freezer cask off.
Freeze your cask off.
Yeah.
I was on the side, and I had 6 kegs that I was in charge of, and one of them was a mushroom. Right? Do you remember this?
I remember that really well.
Now, I thought this was one of the most distasteful beers I'd ever had.
Smelled great.
But that's one of the great things about this beer tasting event. They would invite people, they would submit, and they would accept certain people. But what these companies did was they gave you a keg that was completely different. It was experimental, which I really like. Well, and some of them, they're just promoting what's going to come out in the spring. But often it's experimental. And this mushroom beer, completely experimental. But I made everybody that came to me try that beer. I said, and they said, what do you suggest? And I was playing the brand ambassador kind of guy. Oh, this is the best seller. This is good. This is doing well. I like this. But I said, you have to try this. If you throw it out, if you try half, take a couple sips and throw it out, you have to try this because it's distinctive. And you'll like the fact that you've tried a mushroom beer.
Yeah. And so if they did that to me, I would say, try it. If you don't like it, I'll give you something else.
Yeah.
At least try it.
Oh, you've got to try everything once because you never know until you try it.
So
I have a question for everybody.
yes, Nick.
Who are our solid Canadian brand and Canadian whiskey? I know Tish. Tish comes right to mind.
Mm-hmm.
But who else is there out there? Like who do we rely on as brand ambassadors for Canadian whiskeys?
We've seen Shelter Point. We've seen Dave, obviously. We've seen Shelter Point.
Yeah.
And I trust those Shelter Point guys.
Yeah.
Colin McDougall is
Colin.
okay.
Who is that?
Stephen Wilson is
Don't know who that is.
okay. Stephen Wilson does Crown Royal. Colin McDougall does the Corby brands.
Yeah.
Who else
They
is
don't
really
come
good?
to Alberta, buddy.
Oh, okay. Well, you know,
Yeah.
no, it's your problem, not mine. And it's good.
It is.
Kick him off the video.
Well, there's a guy from Vancouver Island, and I'm sitting at a tasting, and he's talking. And I'm looking around the room, thinking, obviously, I don't have the same whiskey in my glass because this doesn't make any sense. And I told the host, I said, I'm not coming back again because I'm tired of the infomercial. I can't take it any longer.
JP Weiser's had, and I've seen him a couple times. He was with Don, and when Don came to Edmonton, he was with him again. So he was with him in Banff, and he came to Edmonton with him. Does anyone remember his name? Nick, you were there. We got our stuff signed.
Keith Trussler, is it?
Was it Keith?
Keith? Could be. He's a
Dave Midden.
There we go. Dave Midden, Don says.
You know what?
Don, by the way, say hi to your lovely wife, Jane.
Yep.
She's having a gin and tonic. She's not having scotch. She doesn't have to buy into this whole thing. But say hi to Jane.
Don,
Thank you very
your wife
much.
and my wife would get along very well. My wife is very much a gin girl. She does like her scotch as well, though.
Yeah.
But
And
you know what, Dolph?
I like a gin and tonic too, but I'm usually gin and tonic when it's warm. It's a warm drink for me, just like bourbon and ice.
Yeah. Gin
Gin and tonic, those are my two hot, like 30 degree, 35 degree day ones.
Okay, Dolph, going back to when Dr. Don was here last November. So he was joined by Dave Midden. I think that's the first time I've seen Dave Midden in Alberta. I follow him on Instagram. I've seen his post on Twitter, but that was the first time I saw him in Alberta at an event. I don't know who Colin McDougall is, and I've been pretty hardcore in our whiskey community for a number of years. So I guess this speaks to the fact that as Canadians, we're doing our own whiskey.
You must know Joshua Groom from Gibson's.
Nope.
No.
And well, Nick, I did see him and Ryan and I both saw him at the Banff Whiskey Experience, but those are big ones. And I think to answer your question, Nick, we generally, you and I, we go to a lot of tastings, and we go to a lot at very specific stores, and I think it's generally centered around single malts. I really do think so. You have gone to more blends than I have, so you'll go to blends, and I don't know if it's because we've shunned them. And Don said 40 Creek Chris. 2 years ago, I went to a 40 Creek one at Sherbrooke, and it was fantastic. And I bought there. And if I can look down, the Confederation Oak, because of this gentleman and their tasting, it was fun. And it was around Canada Day as well, so that all added to the mystique of it.
Yeah, I second that. 40 Creek Chris. Chris is awesome. He's really good.
But we would like to see more of them out here. But Nick, this is new for us, because if I asked you this question a month ago, before we started doing this book club, before we started reading this, before we started talking to Davin, before we saw Don last year, our connection to Canadian whiskey, I don't think, is nearly what it is right now.
Not at all.
It would have been zero.
In the past month than I have in the past 5 years. And I think it's because of Davin's book. So
I've drank more whiskey in the last month than I have in 52 years of my life.
So, do you guys know the Beam Suntory rep?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I just wait every show to talk to him, to listen to what he has to say. Like, I just find him so full of information.
Yeah.
I don't. Do you guys talk to him?
No.
He's the young guy with the cool haircut and the tight pants and the pointy shoes.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about, but we've never really talked to him. He just kind of breezes through, right?
Oh,
I
geez.
gotta tell you, I don't know which
I
guy
went
you're
into the
talking
liquor
about.
stores and
Buddy. Who?
what's that?
Who's he work for?
He works for Beam Suntory. So he's doing I think it's Canadian Club, isn't it?
CC.
Yeah.
He does more of the Scotch, so he does the Scotch and bourbons.
Well, he does Maker's Mark, he does all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
But
No.
Not do some in the Japanese one. Well,
Never really talked to him, though.
Like
I think
about Matt Jones. You're talking about Matt Jones. He retired.
everything's getting out of control here.
Yeah. Internet's going crazy.
Try that
Is he
again.
not the gentleman that does the Japanese whiskeys as well, Suntory? He's always in a suit, well dressed. I think a mustache, a little bit shorter than me.
Yeah, young guy, younger than all of us, other than maybe Ryan. But
Ryan's older than he looks. He just works out a lot. He's in good shape. He looks good, but he's got some age to him too. Let's not let him off the hook.
but the information he has is just amazing.
Yeah.
And I go over there like a kid in the candy store, listen to the guy talk about candy. It's just amazing.
And you trust him.
Yeah.
And Don says, to Nick's point, the best Canadian whiskey ambassadors tend to work international events. So the big ones. So the Banff and Toronto and Victoria, sorry. And in the States, we're doing New York. What are the big ones in the state? New York. There's not LA.
Boston, San Francisco, Washington.
Chicago, New York.
Yeah.
So,
I tried to get into the San Francisco show. They wanted $3,000 US to buy a 6-foot table
Dave,
for
you
4 hours.
talk to Bob and you say you need to go, and I'll pour with you.
Well, I'm not giving them $3,000 US.
Yes, Dave. I think we should do that, Dolph. Yes, Dave. I'm there with you.
I was going on my own. I told Bob I'm taking a holiday.
Okay. There was another one in Vegas. Does everything as well, so maybe another one in Vegas.
Yeah.
Just for clarity's sake, out there, I do pour for Dave on occasion for 2 brewers. The thing is, he pays me in Scotch, and the last 2 times,
I don't sell
I
Scotch.
got.
Right?
It's good. What's that?
I don't sell Scotch.
No, sorry. No. It's your own whiskey. It's beautiful, number 17 with rye in it. It's my
You're
favorite.
gonna have somebody after me. Keep
No,
that up.
not Scott. No, it's me. That's my fault. 2 brewers 17. That's my boy. My innovative rye. I love it. I'm serious. But going back to the brand ambassadors, when I'm pouring for Dave, the one I like most is the one that gets poured the most as well, because I'm promoting something I love.
Mhm.
And I've only done this 3 times in my life. 3 times over the last 3 years. I find it really fun to be on the side where you're talking about it as opposed to the one where you're drinking 30 or 40 a night.
Yep.
It's really fun. But the stuff that I like the most, which is usually peat, is the stuff that I over pour. That could be one, and I'm sorry, but it's what you like the most that you're promoting, I think. And if you trust the person in front of you, you're going to believe them.
Well,
And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think
it's the old salesman thing is you sell what you like and you sell what's in the inventory and you make the most commission off.
There you go.
I'm not on commission, so I sell what I like.
that's good.
Yeah.
And the credibility goes with that as well.
Yeah.
They believe you, and it's not just this time, it's the next time when you have something else in front of you. It's everyone's got a lot of spirits, and every year you have a different spirit that you're trying to promote as well. However, I need to be in a position like Davin where I could actually phone someone up and they're going to actually spill the beans and tell me what's really going on. I need to get to a point like that sometime in my history where I could actually pull some information out of people.
Yeah.
Don't you think? It'd be
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Thanks for
So
joining
Davin
us.
hooked me up, I think.
Okay, guys, I'm going to be taking off. So good night.
Yeah.
All right,
Well,
Ryan.
we're wrapping everything up in a couple minutes. I just wanted some last comments from anybody. Again, we talked about this tonight.
Yep.
And we're doing the second part of section
That one over here.
which is going to be chapters 13, 14, 15, and 16, I think. And then there's this book, which we're going to talk about a little bit more because I'm developing our idea as to how we're dealing with this in the summer. Our next book club is Ralphie's book club book, which will take us about 3 weeks, I think, maybe a month. This is the one that we're going to be dealing with this summer. And I have some great ideas with this. So I think it's going to be great.
Well, I think the next topic of conversation too for maybe the After Dram is prohibition and kind of the movie quality of the stories. I think that would be great to talk about.
Hey,
Especially
did you guys see the movie where the guys from Chicago were up in, I don't know, it was in North Dakota, and they were meeting the guys from Canada, and the RCMP were all sitting up on the hill with their horses?
that was about Al Capone as well, but it was the guy that caught Al Capone. What was his name?
Oh, the Untouchable guys.
That was that's the movies, The Untouchables. That
I'll
was
never
it.
forget the RCMP guy. They write up to the border and say, "Well, we really can't do a lot."
Was that.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen and lady, I'm going to wrap this up. It's been a fantastic night.
Wow.
History,
Really night.
whiskey, drams with friends. So Nick with the Whiskey Bells, Ryan, a very good bud of mine. Davin, the author of it all, of this book, his newest, and the book that we're dealing with here. Whiskey Dave from Yukon Brewing, Kent, my whiskey-ass brother, and Dr. Don, who was very active on the chat. He said, "Have a nice evening. Cheers, eh?" It doesn't get much better than this. It really doesn't. So please join us next week as we complete section 4 of Davin's Canadian Whiskey, episode 5, the Alberta Scotch Society and Friends Whiskey Book Club, and the ensuing after drams that will happen, which I really do enjoy. 7 o'clock Mountain Standard Time, April 25. Thanks to everyone involved. Thank you to Davin. Thanks to the panel. Thanks to everybody watching us tonight. We'll hopefully see you again in 1 week.
Thanks,
Shout out.
Jason.
Thanks all for doing
Cheers.
this. Thanks, Davin, for being with us.
My pleasure.
Yes. Thank
Yep.